It remains one of the most shocking and traumatic moments in American history, the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln at the hands of John Wilkes Booth. But what Booth said afterwards wasn't spontaneous. In fact, he had practiced it beforehand, which makes sense considering Booth's background. John Wilkes Booth was part of one of the most famous acting families in the 19th century. Both he and his brother Edwin Booth were distinguished stage actors who had starred in some of the country's biggest plays. Born in Maryland, Booth remained in the North throughout the Civil War, but had sided with the Confederacy. During that period, he was a known supporter of slavery and an outspoken critic of Lincoln. So Booth carefully picked the venue for his attack, Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. As an actor, Booth knew his way around the theater, and he meant for the murder to be a theatrical public performance. Booth intended to make a big scene by not only shooting Lincoln, but what he planned to say to the crowd after the deed was done. It didn't all go exactly as Booth had planned, though. After shooting the president in the back of the head at point-blank range, the traitor jumped over the railing of Lincoln's balcony seat. That was all according to Booth's master plan. But despite his familiarity with the theater, Booth misjudged the distance to the stage and broke his leg in the fall. Still, he managed to elude capture by the members of the stunned audience, and before he left the stage, he was able to quickly deliver his prepared speech, uttering the brief line, "Sic semper tyrannis." That is a Latin phrase which translates to "thus always to tyrants." It's also the Virginia state motto, which to this day appears on the state flag. And according to legend, it was said by the assassins who killed Julius Caesar in 44 BC. So why did Booth consider Lincoln, now viewed as America's greatest president, to be a tyrant? It all has to do with the Civil War, of course. By the time Lincoln was shot on April 14, 1865, the war was all but over. Just 5 days earlier, Confederate General Robert E. Lee had surrendered, bringing the main fighting to a close and ensuring a Union victory. The assassination of President Lincoln was part of a larger plan that Booth hatched with his co-conspirators. They believed that by taking out Lincoln, they could energize Southern resistance and rekindle the war. At first, Booth and his fellow conspirators intended to simply kidnap Lincoln and take him to Richmond, Virginia, the Confederate capital. Those plans were foiled when Lincoln failed to materialize where Booth and his collaborators lay in wait. After Lee's surrender, though, Booth and his co-plotters decided assassination was their only option. But that was just one part of their full, elaborate scheme. Booth's cabal of traitors intended to take down the entire federal government in one fell swoop by killing all the top officials at the same time, including not just President Lincoln, but also Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward, all at 10 p.m. on April 15, 1865. According to some reports, commanding Union General Ulysses S. Grant was also targeted for assassination, though it was never proven. Ultimately, the man sent to kill Johnson changed his mind. Seward was wounded by his attacker, but the assassination was foiled, and he ultimately survived. Only the attempt on Lincoln was successful. The rest of Booth's plan also failed. Rather than support the attack, most Southerners mourned the loss of the president and repudiated Booth and his co-conspirators. Instead of a popular uprising, the assassination brought both halves of the fractured nation together to mourn their greatest leader. As President Barack Obama said,
"He was not just ahead of his time in terms of vision, but helped to drag the country in a new direction."
And as for Booth himself, the broken leg hindered his attempts to escape. 12 days later, he was discovered hiding in a barn, injured and unable to travel further. He was shot and killed, and died reviled by all.